Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about what is called the Mandela Effect. So, this is sort of a psychological condition that is very prominent in our time. But first, let's define what is the Mandela Effect and how can it affect you. As you may have already realized, the Mandela Effect is named after the South African activist, anti apartheid activist named Nelson Mandela. But why was it named after Nelson Mandela? It's very simple. So, there was this paranormal researcher who we call Fiona Broom. And this person basically just conceptualized and she basically just speculated that Mandela, Nelson Mandela, didn't actually die in prison. He didn't actually pass away in prison in the 1980s. But people actually believed that he did. And so did Fiona Broom. And so she thought of the Mandela effect. But what is the Mandela effect? Have you ever played Monopoly before? Well, it turns out Mr. Monopoly never actually wore a monocle. Okay? It's kind of shocking, but if you can see here in this picture, this is actually the Monopoly man, not the one with the monocle. It's actually kind of shocking to me. Here are also some other examples with Curious George, the cartoon character. He never actually had a tail. He just looked like a standing monkey. He just looked like this. Okay? And Fruit Loops, the cereal, the logo of the cereal Fruit Loops it didn't actually have the text being fruit, like literally just fruit. It actually was more like this, like Fruit Loops with with a double O on the fruit. That's really interesting. We also have we also have this example of Pikachu. As you can see right here, the left side of this image, it shows that Pikachu has a black, sort of looks like a black tip on the tail of Pikachu, but in actuality, Pikachu actually had a yellow tail through and through. So, if we're going to think about all of these examples of the Mandela effect, we can see just how prominent and how much the Mandela effect actually influences us. But there is a great amount of science behind it. So let me explain, okay? Why is the Mandela effect? Let's first ask the question, why does the Mandela effect even happen? Well, the Mandela effect usually happens, okay? The Mandela effect, it usually happens through a process which we call confabulation. It's spelled like this, okay? Confabulation. It looks like a big word, but the meaning behind it is very easy. It's basically just your brain tricking you into thinking that certain events happen, into thinking that certain events happened when they actually did, or into think your brain is tricking you into thinking that certain aspects of your memory are true. Like for example, we can just say that you confess to your crush. You remember your crush saying yes to you, but in actuality, your crush actually didn't. That's kind of sad. That's what we call confabulation. Okay? Your brain basically tricks you into thinking that some things happened when they actually didn't. So, what causes confabulation? Well, there are a few causes of it, some ranging from a little bit concerning to really concerning, and you should go see a doctor. Okay? So, confabulation basically just happens. It's basically just a cause, and it basically just happens, and it boils down to three reasons. Okay? Confabulation usually happens in people with brain injuries, whether it be dementia, amnesia, or really any kind of damage or trauma that inflicts that is inflicted toward the frontal lobe of the brain. Okay, there are also other causes for the Mandela effect happening. There's also pattern recognition. Okay, so why did I say pattern recognition as one of the causes of the Mandela effect happening? Well, as humans, we naturally tend to lean more towards patterns more than isolated facts, okay? We naturally learn to we naturally learn faster when we see the patterns in certain lessons, in certain abstract things. And that's how the human brain really works. We love to figure out patterns in things. And sometimes this ability of ours can become a little bit flawed. Okay? So let's go back to the example of the Monopoly Man. If you can see the Monopoly Man and look at his outfit, he looks he looks like he's rich. He looks like a wealthy and distinguished person. So if we deduce what we just learned earlier with pattern recognition as a source of the Mandela effect, we can see that through his outfit, he looks rich. And most of the rich people, or a lot of the people we think of as rich in the media or wherever, wears monocles as a sign of the higher class, as a sign of high class and high status. So that's probably one of the reasons why we remember Monopoly Man having a monocle when he actually doesn't. Okay? That's one of the examples of why pattern recognition is a source of the Mandela effect. Okay. So lastly, it really just boils down to three reasons. Okay. This is the first confabulation. As we mentioned earlier, your brain basically is tricking you into thinking that something happened when it really didn't, or that something is true when it really isn't. The second is pattern recognition. When we generalize something based off what we already know, even though our conclusion may be false. Now, the third reason for the Mandela effect is social reinforcement. Okay? We live in an age where social media is very prominent in our culture. Okay? And social media tends to have these, what we call echo chambers. For those of you who don't know what an echo chamber is, it's basically just an environment wherein a certain type of thinking succeeds. Other people, instead of making their own opinions, they follow. They follow the consensus of whatever space they may be in. Like, for example, if you're a feminist, okay? If you're a feminist in Twitter, or as we call now, X. If you're a feminist in X, and you made a group full of feminists, would any of you would any of you disagree that women should have equal rights? No, right? None of you would disagree. All of you would just be agreeing with each other and reinforcing your own beliefs, your own shared beliefs. And that is what an echo chamber is. And that is a part of the social reinforcement we're talking about, okay? When we collectively think of anything and we seem to remember things in common, even though our remembrance or our memories or our interpretations of anything could be wrong, we tend to believe it because it is socially reinforced. Okay? So that's basically what causes the Mandela effect. I hope I've convincingly managed to describe what the Mandela effect is for any of you who doesn't know what the Mandela effect is. And hopefully you learned something today. That's it for the Mandela effect.